What's going on, everybody? Thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream segment of Mikasa Sukasa. And today we have a very special guest. We have Garland Nixon, one of the co-hosts of Fault Lines with Nixon and Stranahan on Sputnik Radio. He also has his own syndicated radio show on Pacifica, right? That's what it's called?
Yes, Pacifica
Yeah,
Network in Washington,
Pacifica.
D.C.
Fun fact, Pacifica stands for pacifist. So
Yep.
you just learned something new about Garland. So Garland has been on the show before. He is a Democrat, for those of you who do not know. He's one of those Democrats who is tired of the Democratic Party, clearly. Funny enough, Garland and I think we originally crossed paths because of Russiagate, actually. Because we were one of the only two people that seemed to express any sanity on our timelines at the time, and that's how we kind of came into each other's attention. And we've been kind of, I've been going on Fault Lines pretty regularly. We have conversations pretty regularly, and I couldn't pass up an opportunity to let Garland come on to YouTube and tell everybody how he was right, and so are we. But how you doing, Garland?
Oh, fantastic! Another thing a lot of people don't know, I'm actually on the National Board of Directors for the American Civil Liberties Union. So I spend some time traveling and doing stuff with the ACLU. Also, that's a lot of fun.
That's some good stuff. And you used to be an investigator.
I was in law enforcement for over 20 years. I retired as a major, and believe it or not, I was actually on the board of the ACLU. So we were suing all these police departments for discrimination while I was a police officer. And I retired as a major. I was the commander of the investigations division. I was an investigator. So I got a lot of background in those kinds of things.
Man, you know what's funny? I'm so glad that you're still alive. Like I actually met a guy who was the chief of the DC Metropolitan Police Department during basically, I guess, when they started gentrifying DC. And it was like the crack era got really bad in the area. You know how what
yeah, the 80s.
And they basically tried to tell him to step down. Like they kept threatening him constantly because he was like, I'm not going to go after the poor people and disproportionately prosecute them. Like when there's crime, like whenever he tried to investigate a politician, they would step in. And then whenever he wouldn't investigate, wouldn't go chase down poor black people, they would, wag their finger at him. So he just stepped down. But see, people, for those of you who are Kamala lovers, you can be a cop and be a good cop. Kamala just wasn't. So
exactly.
There you go. So the Mueller report hasn't been fully released yet. However, we've acknowledged a few things, right? Like there was no collusion. They said, I don't know why the news keeps saying it like this. They said he's not exonerated of obstruction of justice. And I'm thinking, like, is he being indicted on it? Is he being prosecuted? Was he found guilty? Then it sounds like he was actually exonerated on obstruction. Maybe you can help, because I did some investigation in the Army too. Maybe you can help me. Isn't that what that means? Isn't that what exonerated means?
Yeah, because when we did investigations, there are any number of ways that an investigator can close out or finish an investigation. They can say the person was not involved. Let's say I did an internal investigation on someone in law enforcement. At the end, I could say the person was not involved. They accused this person, but somebody else did it. I could say they were exonerated. There's evidence that they didn't do it. I could say they did. You know what I mean? So there's a myriad of ways that someone can verbalize the closing of his investigation. So the fact that he didn't say exonerated means absolutely nothing. Here's the only thing that matters. He wasn't charged with a crime, and he ain't going to be charged with a crime. So a jury's job is to exonerate, convict or exonerate, so to make a finding of guilty or innocence. So it wasn't Mueller's job to exonerate him. In fact, it wasn't Mueller's job to find him guilty. It was Mueller's job to do an investigation and present the evidence to his boss. I was the head of investigations. That's what people did. They'd finish an investigation, they'd make a finding, they give it to me. I could change the finding as the head of investigations. So theoretically, legally, he could have given it to Barr, and Barr could have changed it. But let's keep something in mind. It's very important. And that is, there's all of this talk as though Barr and Mueller may not be on the same page, that Mueller wrote a certain thing and Barr, it seems like, might have changed it or wrote something into it that Mueller didn't determine. Number one, they're both Republicans. They've been friends for 30 years. They both worked together in the Bush administration. So Barr has come out and made statements. Not one member of the Mueller team has come out and said that Barr said anything wrong. So for those of who are saying, well, Barr is saying that Mueller didn't say it. Well, if Mueller or none of his people step up and say we don't agree with that, well, then obviously they agree with what Barr said.
100% agree. I feel like, and I think that me and you actually discussed this on Fault Lines. Like, let's not pretend like Barr isn't one of the teams. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's not
Exactly.
pretend like him and Mueller aren't like friends. Like, they're not, when I say part of the team, I mean the team that wouldn't mind ousting Trump because they've been part of the establishment for so long together that supersedes party lines,
Right.
right? So, and then people oftentimes overlook the fact that Robert Mueller wasn't brought there to investigate Russiagate. And I think that that's one of the things that frustrates me more than, because we once again, it's something we discuss regularly. The story has become so convoluted and disjointed from reality and where it started that it's almost like you have to go back and watch hundreds of videos, hundreds of hours of videos, just to remember where we started at when this conversation began. And the conversation started at at Robert Mueller being brought in to look into the obstruction of justice of James Comey being fired, not to prosecute and indict Manafort, not to investigate Russiagate, because that was Andrew McCabe, and Andrew McCabe got fired because they figured out that he had clear conflicts of interest and he was basically making things up as long as he went along to get Trump out of office. Like, that's all Mueller was there to do, was to investigate obstruction, and somehow he became the lead investigator in something that he wasn't brought on to take care of. What do you think about that?
Oh, 100%. I think it's ironic that Mueller is involved in the ending of this thing, because you can go on. I've put it up on a number of social media platforms. You can go on and you can online and you can find Robert Mueller in 2003 doing the WMD lies. Oh, he's going on about WMD, Saddam Hussein. And I bring it up to the people who believe this crap. And I say, well, the same guy, the same people lie to you about WMDs. They come around a decade later, the same people with a new set of lies, and the suckers bit the hook again. And so he was involved. Mueller was involved in 2003. He's involved again now because he worked for the Bush administration. So what we have is a recycling. It's interesting. Where Trump has recycled the John Boltons and the neocons from previous administrations for his foreign policy. The whole Russiagate people have recycled the neocons to come back to people with the WMD lies, to come back with the same lies. And the suckers are biting the hook again. And people like you and I have been telling them for a year, hello.
Man, it's been longer than that, dog. It's going on 3 years.
Yeah.
It's Lord Jesus, man. Look, I done lived in 3 different states since Russiagate started. Not even an exaggeration. I lived in 3 different states and in four different apartments since Russiagate has started. And every step of the way, I was like, for me, I was saying this yesterday. So Jake went on this ridiculous rant about Russians. Trump took money from the Russians. He probably was held over his head. And I'm like, bruh, what? It's crazy to me, because to take the side of Cenk and mainstream media and the Rachel Maddows of the world, because it's weird to me that Cenk doesn't see the irony of him supposed to be standing up to mainstream media, but actually quoting them and using those quotes to justify his stances. It's really ironic. He sounds just like Maddow. You have to give Trump a lot of credit to take the stances that they've taken. You are basically saying that Trump was so clairvoyant. He had so much foresight that he's like, I'm gonna run for president and I'm gonna work side by side with Russians. Never get caught until 24 hours before Hillary Clinton gets elected, or gets rejected, I should say. And like that, he was just 80 steps ahead of all of our intelligence agencies, all the politicians. And it's just really hard for me to buy that. What do you think? What do you think about that?
See, none of this ever made any sense, but it didn't have to make a sense. I have this book now. It's going to show up backwards here, but I've talked about this book many times. It's called The Confidence Game: Why We Fall for It Every Time. And it talks about a con game. And that's all this ever was a con game. And all these people were marks in a con game. And the way a con game works, the way a confidence artist works is this. They figure out what it is that you want to hear. And they use that against you. If you want to hear that you're handsome or you're smart, they tell you that you're handsome and you're smart. But if you want to hear that Donald Trump is, you hate Donald Trump. So if you want to hear that he's a bad guy, he's a Russian puppet, these people were so emotionally triggered by Trump that anything they told them bad about Trump, they would accept, which made them dupes, suckers. And you know what you do to a dupe? I'll put it like this. P.T. Barnum had a quote, and I never forgot this. He said, "It's a crime against God and nature to allow a sucker to keep his money." So that's all it was. These were suckers. Somebody was going to take them to the cleaners. They took them before for WMDs. They took them again. And now they have a problem. And let me say this. So a lot of people are saying, well, they're going through the stages of grief. They're in denial. It's something a little bit different. Because if you lose a loved one or something bad happens, you go through stages of grief, but you're dealing with that pain. But when you are a mark, when you're a sucker and you've been conned, you have a bigger problem. You have been had, but you're embarrassed. That's what's added to a person who's been conned. Now, they don't want to admit to themselves they've been conned. They got people like Garland and Niko laughing at them saying, sucker, we told you so. So now they just can't come out and say I was wrong because they're too embarrassed.
You know,
and a big part of
100% agree.
Embarrassment.
100% agree. I literally was talking. I was like, yo, I was saying about like with TYT for the most part, who like literally Jank went on Twitter and said he's not conceding anything. Like I was like, you have bad friends. Y'all aren't friends. Y'all can't be, because when my friend is being demonstratively idiotic in their actions, as a friend, I like pull you to the side. Hey, dog, look. This ain't it, man. This ain't it. You got to get this together. You're embarrassing us as a unit right now with your actions. Get it together. Let's get the facts straight and move on from there. But no, and you can blame a lot of things, right? Let's be clear about something. People think, I mean, the money probably affected TYT, just like it definitely affected the mainstream. But what's scary about the TYT situation is that people haven't figured it out that they're wrong on war 98% of the time. They're wrong on regime change. Like the other day, Anna wrote they did an episode about Maduro where she said that he absolutely 100% won illegitimately, that the opposition leaders were like thrusted out of the nation, and yet Guaido is still there. So like, how does that make any sense? If he's the opposition leader and the opposition leaders were thrust out of the nation for fear of being arrested, why was Guaido still there and so confident? And, you know, I'm the president now, and he's not arrested. It literally contradicts. So, and once again, these are the same things I'm saying. Like, hold on. I thought that Trump, it's like they don't recognize the contradictions in their own stupidity. Like, I thought that Trump was working for Russia. So why is he putting sanctions on Russia, launching missiles at Russia, pulling out of treaties with Russia, doing everything he can to prove that he's not on their team? Where, like, which one is it? It can't be both.
And that was part of the game. Part of the game was Trump came in and he was saying some things that, look, when Trump was saying a lot of stuff on the campaign trail, people were saying, well, listen to what Trump's saying. And I'm like, well, you know, it's all lies. He's not
right.
But the fact of the matter was he was questioning NATO. He was talking about possible, you know, rapprochement with Russia. And they didn't want that to happen. So they did what they could to try to address that, to try to stop him. To me, that's what that was all about. This was a game. In a way, in an abstract way, it wasn't really about Trump. It was about foreign policy, in that anybody who'd come in and had went against the Washington Consensus foreign policy of neocon interventionism, anybody who had did that, they would have went after to try to stop them, because their game was, we're going to put the neocon queen Hillary in and she'll do our evil bidding and life goes forward. It didn't work out that way. But now they got some problems. And I'm going to say this. That investigation, neither one of us are Trump supporters. One of the reasons I'm on the board of directors of the ACLU is because I believe in justice. I don't care if you killed 12 people. We have a process and you have a right to due process. And you're convicted, whatever, but we have a process that everybody goes through.
I can't stress enough how much I agree with that.
And Trump, I don't like Trump. I disagree with his policies. But if we allow injustice to happen to Donald Trump and Tulsi Gabbard wins, Bernie Sanders wins, look, If they do an investigation against Bernie or Tulsi, they'll make something up. If they do the same thing, Trump, there was nothing there. But if they
Oh,
really
they did
want
make something
somebody,
up.
they'll
They
make
did.
something up.
They remember they did. So when I once again, because you know obviously where I stand when it comes to the FBI and how they handle this investigation, whenever that gave me a leg to stand on, whenever they started to investigate Jane after Bernie clearly was not backing down from running for president, and I was like, this is a trumped up FBI investigation in order to try and discredit Bernie. It won't work, but I now see how they operate. So I wasn't in the camp of, there was a camp of Bernie supporters that like believed in Russiagate, clearly because Bernie told them to. And so they were like, oh, well, we can't trust the FBI when they're investigating Jane. But it's like, no. But according to Bernie, we got to listen to, like, you know, y'all know I love Bernie. But it's like, no, according to Bernie, we got to listen to the FBI. You can't say the FBI is legitimate in this situation. They're acting altruistically and doing their job. And then in this situation, because you don't like what the outcome may be, that all of a sudden they're corrupt. You have to understand, one thing the intelligence communities have in common is that they're consistent in their corruption. That's very clear. We've seen it. So my question to you is, as a Democrat, how much is that going to affect who you choose in 2020, this entire Russiagate scandal, one, and then two, how do you think that will affect how Trump's viability will be treated by both the ones who already voted for him and people who may now vote for him because they saw him as a victim for so long? We're kind of teetering on whether or not they supported him, and now because Trump is so good, he is really good at manipulation. He can make a look at, like, now look, every bad thing that they've ever said about me is a lie, and it was trumped up by the Democrats. What do you think about those two things?
The first thing is, well, I'll put it like this. I've been a Tulsi Gabbard supporter since 2016. In 2016, like before this election, I was saying, well, I like Tulsi Gabbard for the future. I'm a big Tulsi Gabbard fan. So I was already I already liked Tulsi Gabbard in the past. But when all this happened, to see someone come out and say, like, go against it and say, no, you know, I'm opposed to the Syrian action. I'm opposed to the Venezuelan action. The not buy into Trump, into Russiagate, push back against that and say we need to end the Cold War. I feel like that I'm in a room full of crazy people and there's a couple sane people and she's one of them. You know, it feels like that sometimes. And especially the other day, I made a horrible mistake. After all of this happened, I thought to myself, I'm going to turn on MSNBC and see what these fools are talking about.
Oh man, that gets your blood pressure up.
I looked at that and I'm like, what planet am I on? These people are insane. So it's obvious to me that the people they're pushing, the Kamala Harrises of the world and the Amy Klobuchars and these other people, are out in space. They're unelectable. So here's what I'll say. If the Democrats rig things and they end up with one of their Kamala Harris's, Biden's, whoever, I think they lose to Trump. I think they lose to Trump. Trump is very beatable, but it's going to have to be some combination of Bernie or Tulsi or Bernie. I prefer Tulsi. I got some issues with Bernie, but here's what I'll say about Garland-Nixon voting. And this is important to me. If you ask, well, who would you vote for, or well, who wouldn't you vote for? Here's what I say. I look at a candidate and I say, all right, I like or dislike this candidate. Is there a deal breaker? So I could vote for Bernie because I got some things that I'm burned up with Bernie. But when I look at his overall policy, there's not one thing that I can say, well, that's a deal breaker. I can look at Hillary or Klobuchar and people like that and say, well, those are deal breakers. So I could vote for Bernie. My first choice is Tulsi. Absolutely. I will reluctantly, if Bernie's the person, I will reluctantly. I like Bernie and all, but I got some issues with him being a little going along with these mainstream memes, I think, in a way that are dangerous.
Yeah.
But I take, if he's running against Trump, I'm voting against Bernie. If it's Biden,
I'm a hop, skip, and jump to the damn booth to vote for him if you run against Trump. You know, and like I said, you know how I feel. And I'm very big on strategy. When we're talking about, you know, if Tulsi wins, wow. I mean, shoot, I might sign up for her security detail.
What do you think of Biden?
What do you mean? What do I think of him?
Well,
are you joking with me right now, girl?
No. Only reason I said that because I was thinking about, but everybody's pushing Biden and saying, oh, when Biden gets in, he's going to be, you know, the big guy. He's going to challenge.
Biden's going to he's going to shrink like he always does. Every time he opens his mouth, he loses points.
Biden's problem, and it's similar to Hillary's and what she did with the people around her. Biden's the person that looks good until you date him. If Biden gets in and people start looking at his record, here's a guy who, and a lot of people don't realize this. When the Ukraine in 2014, when the U.S. worked and fomented a coup in Ukraine, right? So they put Biden.
Still ongoing, by the way.
What's that?
I said, or not ongoing. That regime is still there, by the way.
Yep. So they put Biden in charge of what was called the Ukraine project. He was effectively a viceroy of a colony, is really what it was. Listen to this. Explain this to me. But Joe Biden becomes put in charge of Ukraine in February. In April, his son is placed on the board of directors of the largest gas company in the country that he's been just placed in charge of. There is something awful shit.
What?
His son is on the board of directors. Now, let me add this. The owner of that company was in trouble. He was in so much trouble. He was so crooked that the UK had frozen his asset. They frozen like 28 million in assets. So you've got this crooked oligarch who owns this gas company. Joe Biden comes over, basically takes over the country, and his son is immediately on the board of directors. I think that's going to come back when people start opening that closet. A whole lot of skeletons are going to fall out.
Oh man, Joe Biden is. What's funny about Joe Biden to me is, like, first of all, like, you couldn't beat Hillary or Obama, and you didn't even win again. What he ran the first time he ran was in the Bush election, the Georgia.
Yep.
So you couldn't beat you couldn't beat Al Gore. Okay, you couldn't beat Obama. Like, and then people forget that, like, Biden was the guy that when you found out he was coming to speak instead of Obama, like, I remember being in the Army and Obama was supposed to come speak. For whatever reason, Obama couldn't come speak. And I think had something to do with the Boston Marathon, to be honest with you. And instead, we found out Biden was going to speak. And they were like, oh, do we have to go? Like, nobody cared about Obama and nothing, but he had a bunch of memes online that made him seem way cooler than he really was. And now all of a sudden, polls are trying to paint him as a front runner. Now, granted, these polling methods are horrendous. They are an embarrassment to polls, to be honest with you. But when Biden's record comes out, man, you are Hillary Clinton without the same type of name recognition or power. Like, Hillary had a lot of power. Biden doesn't even have Hillary Clinton's alumna. You know what I'm saying? Like, they all belong to Kamala. So who the hell's supposed to run his campaign? A bunch of dinosaurs, basically. They have no idea how to win one.
I think another part of it is this too, and when I see Gillibrand in the huge state of New York with a lot of delegates, when I see Beto in the huge state of Texas with a lot of delegates, Kamala Harris in the huge state of California with a lot of delegates, I am suspicious. And with it, all these people they're throwing in there, which wouldn't make sense because they're all establishment candidates, which means they're stealing votes. Biden's coming in, he's going for the same votes as Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, Beto. But what if they don't care? What if they want to get all of their votes together to make sure they get to the second round at the convention? They all go to.
No, and I told you that.
Oh, you're the one? I've been hearing a lot of people saying that. Yeah, that's probably where I heard it from.
But you're right. You're right.
If you think about what I'm saying is bigger, and what I'm saying is this, basically, and what you've been saying is this. When it comes down to it, nobody still trusts. No, I was going to say nobody trusts the DNC not to rig it. No, we trust them to rig it. We will be
counting on it
if they don't rig it.
Yeah, we're counting on it. We're expecting it. I did the day Bernie announced, because finally Bernie and Tulsi had announced. I did a video dedicated to helping people be proactive in preventing rigging. Like, know who your election supervisors are by name. Call them in advance. Send out letters and emails to let them know that you will be watching. Become pollsters. Become ballot counters. Start introducing ballot measures in your municipality, in your city, in your state. Like, there are steps you can take to make it known, hey, we're paying attention to you. Because we now know that there are some people are willing to do something about it, especially when it comes to them looking good or bad, right? So we found out Ron DeSantis did this in Florida. Ron DeSantis has actually been he's actually probably been the best governor that we've had.
It's amazing. Yeah, I was
2 decades, man. It's crazy.
Well, you know what?
Got rid of Common Core. He has an environmental coalition, banned fracking, Is
Opened up the
putting together,
cannabis laws.
huh?
Opened up the medical cannabis laws.
Yeah, open up medical cannabis laws. This man had put together a grand jury to make it so that they can the Debbie Wasserman Schultz district, which is District 23 in Broward County, Fort Lauderdale area. That will now the school board will now be under the state's control because of how much money has been siphoned off by Debbie Wasserman Schultz and her cronies. And like because it's like the second wealthiest school district in the world, in the country, excuse me. So like he's been doing a fantastic job. And so he also, as we know, fired 2 board of election supervisors for rigging here. And they were I think one, it would have favored the Democrats, the other one would have favored the Republicans. And with Brenda Snipes, he gave her the option because obviously she would have made a bigger fuss about it because it was national news. But he said basically, you gonna leave or I'm gonna fire you. But either way, you gone. And so would the scrutiny have been on Brenda Snipes if we didn't know her by name?
Right.
And
And
that's what it takes.
yep. And if you think about this, when what I just said about the DNC, that we trust them. We trust them as thieves and as crooks, right? That's like, can you imagine if it was like, hey, Garland's coming over the house, and everybody was like, hide your purses, make sure don't have any valuables out because he's a thief. You wouldn't want me in your house. We're effectively saying that about the Democratic Party. We're saying, well, we know they're crooks. They've already started. And one of the ways that they steal it, when we say the Democratic Party, we don't include the CNNs, the MSNBCs, the New York Times, and the Washington Post. We say, okay, there's the Democratic Party and there's the media. I don't see it like that. I don't think that there's like a division. I see these media outlets as proxies, as tools, or even extensions of the Democratic Party. So now when the Democratic Party is like, we got to rig it, well, they can rig it internally, but they can also use their proxies. And I believe when Biden comes in, which inevitably he will, it'll be at least as bad as it was with Hillary, if not worse, because they're terribly desperate and Bernie's the front runner right now. I think we're going to see a level of chicanery on the MSNBCs, the CNNs, and the Washington Posts of the world that will be shocking to the conscience because they're really afraid and they would rather Trump win than Bernie any day of the week.
Yeah, definitely. 100% agree. I think that because it's not only the combination of obviously Biden being once again, the heir apparent to Hillary, just the male version of her, but also the fact that, well, Kamala's not panning out to do as well as they thought she would. When you announce, I think I talked about this on your show. When you announce this early, people forget Obama was, according to everything we knew at the time, this man's had a clean slate. Like, you were a human rights attorney, you were a civil rights activist, you were pro cannabis. Like, when he announced early, it was, oh my God, I can't believe somebody like, but he didn't have the name recognition. Kamala already had it. So there was no more room for really excitement. All there was left was scrutiny. So then you gave people 7 months to scrutinize you before the debates. And by that time it's too late. Right. You got same thing with Gillibrand, same thing with Cory Booker. And it's funny because out of the race so far, Cory Booker is being the least scrutinized because he has like the least problems, which isn't saying much. But like that lets you know how bad the field is. So like Biden is their last hope. And it's also that's also the reason why they have to make sure, like I said, we're talking about somebody from Texas is in the race, Minnesota, where Bernie damn near swept the elections. It wasn't even close until they implemented the superdelegates. Kirsten Gillibrand in the state that Bernie would have otherwise taken without any problems in New York. Andrew Gillum trying to stay in the spotlight with his new little quote unquote election reform nonsense. And then Stacey Abrams being floated specifically because they know she can't win while running for president. Nobody knows who the hell she is. But also they need Georgia. They can't allow Bernie to win Georgia because Georgia has a lot of electoral votes. If you combine, they don't need 15% in every state. They need 15% in their home states. Kamala in California. So they just need 15% in their home states. That is enough that it won't put anyone over the top. However, it will stop Bernie from winning in the first round. And that's what needs to kind of be understood when especially when we're talking about donating to Tulsi. And speaking of which, before we go, Tulsi is less than 15,000 donations away.
Oh,
And yes, less than 15,000 individual donations away from reaching her goal of 65,000 again on that debate stage, which of course she's trying to reach before the end of the month. So we don't have any, as Garland would say, chicanery trying to keep her off of the debate stage. So make sure that you go do that. I'm going to post the link in the comments section after this video is concluded. And of course, make sure you catch her right here on MCSC Network live on Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard in LA. We will be interviewing Tulsi Gabbard, and we will be letting her clear the air on all the nonsense that everybody has tried to push on her. Granted, the hard-headed people won't listen anyway, but we're still going to let her talk, and we're going to let the facts and the receipts speak for themselves. With that being said, thank you so much for coming on, Garland. I appreciate it. We definitely got to get you on again sooner rather than later. I hate that it's been that long thus far, but I'm sure we will have plenty because they're not letting this Russiagate. So I don't know why I was naive. I tried to convince myself that they would let it go, but
they can't let go. They got a tiger by the tail. They can't hold on and they can't let go.
Yeah, you want to be entertained. Go watch how Michael Tracy and Jordan Sheridan, once again, y'all know I don't like Jordan, but it was still hilarious watching Michael Tracy and Jordan go back and forth with Cenk. Like, you're trying to say you didn't push Russiagate. You're a liar. I was on the panel where you said these things. Like, people going, Max Blumenthal went at him, Glenn Greenwald went at him. Like, and I'm glad it's refreshing to see journalists who understand the responsibility that we have. When you're pushing things like this with an audience as large as TYT has, it can be dangerous. Once again, people lose jobs, people lose friends. Jimmy Dore was ostracized from TYT, and it turned out he was the only one that was right the entire time. And then it goes back to what you said. Now they don't want to reconcile because their feelings are hurt, their egos are damaged. And all of a sudden, it's still Jimmy's fault that he was right and tried to warn them, and it's still our fault that we were right. And now everybody's, shit, I'll call it. We're gloating because we deserve it. We deserve it. Y'all have been trashing us for 2.5 years, calling us conspiracy theorists. And we were like, the irony.
Between now and 2020, all of these established candidates are going to have to figure out how to run for president without a platform. Because I've heard Bernie's platform policy, I've heard Tulsi's policy platform. The rest of them is vote for me because I'm nice and I love America and we have democracy and lots of platitudes and stuff like that. But I don't think that's going to hold up very long.
I don't think it's going. You can only say America so many times, but outside of context, before people are going to be like, okay, hold up. I get it. We're in America and Americans have values and values are in America and we have American values. But like, Lord Jesus, how many American values do we have before you can talk about something else? Like the fact that I'm dying from lack of healthcare, something like that, Oh, and you better vote for Beto, though. You got to vote for Beto because he might swing and hit you in the forehead if you don't vote for him. Just letting everybody know. So I don't know if you've seen his flailing arms, but Lord Jesus.
He looked like an octopus.
Bruh, I'm telling you.
Arms all over the place. But everyone listens. I always say this. Voters all listen to the same radio station, WIIFM. What's in it for me? You got to tell them what's in these. But with these establishment people, there is nothing in it for them. They're going to take your money. They're going to start a war. They're going to give it to Wall Street. There's nothing in it for you.
Yep, 100% of the time. So Garland, for the people, tell them where they can find you at.
Every morning it's 105.5 FM in Washington, D.C. That's my Sputnik show. I do a show on Pacifica every Friday from 6 to 7 p.m. You can go to WPFWFM.org, 89.3 FM in Washington, D.C. And I do a TV show that airs in New York City. It's called Chasing News with Bill Spadia. It's like 11 o'clock at night, but it's a fun show. So that's that's how Garland spends his time.
We have a lot of LA people, so I'm sure they'll be around and be up to catch it. And by the way, people on Fault Lines, the show that he goes on Sputnik Radio, you can follow them on Twitter. And they retweet and tweet out the segments, and they have some amazing people on. I even heard they have this guy named Niko House on.
Yeah, every now and then we have
pretty smart guy, man. That's a pretty smart guy,
Oh, he's a troublemaker, man. He's out here raising hell. He's upsetting some people.
A few of them, only when it's called for. Man, I appreciate you coming on once again, man. Thanks for being here. Thanks to you all for tuning in. Like I said, go donate to Tulsi Gabbard's campaign right now. The link will be in the comment section. Remember, more than anything else, people, find your balance. Peace.